Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's UCX talk. I'm joined here by Julien Cordonneau. Julien is Vice President of Facebook, of Workplace by Facebook. I nearly got that wrong there, Julien. Sorry. Good morning to you.
Hey, Harry. Thanks for the invitation and the opportunity to talk today.
We are going ahead today, and we're looking at how can companies become collaborative communities. And this is a really exciting topic, simply because we're going to be covering the ins and outs of this, of what's happened during the pandemic. Obviously, a lot of companies have had to change the way that they've worked and also have had to interact in different ways with their employees. And Julien is a real expert on this and has been working in and out, I guess, with frontline workers throughout this with different clients of Workplace by Facebook. So, Julien, just to kick things off a little bit this morning, I wanted to ask you about creating a community in companies during the pandemic. I mean, I can imagine only that's been hard, and some companies have succeeded at it and others haven't. Can you give us just a bit of your thoughts on, I guess, who's succeeded and why?
Yeah, happy to. I like to think that turning a company into a community and connecting everyone very often for the first time in an organization is what Workplace does very well and what Workplace is now famous for. But as you said, it's not easy. And there's a reason why no one has done it before, especially when you think of companies that have a diverse workforce with people on different time zones, speaking different languages, and people who sometimes never had a desk, never had an email, or never had a PC. But I think what COVID created is a situation where there is an urgency to connect everyone, to make sure that everyone is equally connected, of course, informed, productive, empowered, and even augmented by technology. But it's complicated, and it used to be very expensive. And what I think was reserved before COVID to some visionaries, and I would quote some of our customers like Walmart, AstraZeneca, GSK, Heineken, or Spotify, is now becoming a mainstream thing. Every company wants to do it, but sometimes they don't know where to start. How do you put in the cloud? How do you give access to SaaS tools to people who, again, do not have an email? So it used to be complicated, it used to be expensive, but I like to think that Workplace does that very well, and that companies understand very well now that connecting everyone, and as you said, turning the company into a community, does become a competitive advantage for them.
I mean, just to kind of go on from that question, you mentioned about this being a competitive advantage to companies. How do you think this will be a competitive advantage to companies? How do you think it will change the way companies operate? And why do you think companies should be really thinking about this? And I think about examples throughout the pandemic where some companies have tried to manage their culture. I think it was Clifford Chance who was sending out welcome gifts to new staff, and obviously that's not people in the front line. But how do you think that will develop, I guess, as we go into a hybrid world, and why do you think it's so important for companies to focus on this, to give them that competitive edge?
Well, I think that you can recognize, or you can tell the efficiency of an organization and even the culture of an organization by the speed at which information travels, top down, bottom up, peer to peer, I would say. And very often, companies were divided in two. You had the people who were connected, the people who had access to the tools, the people who had access to emails, to the intranet, and you had the rest of the company who was completely disconnected. So I think when you can connect everyone, when people, feel that they belong to a bigger organization with a mission, when they understand who they work for, who they work with, what is the culture of the company, what are the values of the management of the company, great things happen in terms of employee engagement, employee sentiment, employee retention, and all of that has an impact on the bottom line. I have many customers, and it's almost like a pattern, who say things like happy employees equals happy customers equals happy bottom line. Well, how do you get happy employees? First, you need to get them equally connected and informed. You need to stop cutting the company into between the haves and the have-nots, and people who have access to information and those who don't. And I think it's a great opportunity for software vendors like us to help and make the best of this opportunity. But I think it's new because, again, It used to be complicated and expensive, and you need to move to a world of IT and a world of SaaS, where products are easy to use, mobile friendly, and with no training needed.
Yeah, it's a good point, and it's interesting you touch on the bit about employees being happy, and how company values are critical to kind of supporting an organisation going forwards. I mean, just thinking about those points, Julian, and just to say to those of you who are listening, do feel free to pop questions through. We can answer those as we go along through the session this morning. But how have communications, I guess, thinking about frontline employees specifically, and also office workers, changed, I guess, during the whole period of the pandemic? We've obviously been in this situation for 9 months. You talked about the importance of health, of happiness, and obviously that has an impact on health and well-being. And what impact has that had when I guess it comes to productivity? Because you kind of touched on that a little bit there, but really thinking about productivity and communication between different colleagues, how should companies be, one, thinking about that now, and two, thinking about that into 2021?
Well, I think I like to think of frontline and being able to connect frontline employees, people who've never been connected before, as the next frontier of IT and SaaS in general. And it's a market of 2 billion people who go to work every day, again, never had a desk, never had an office, never had an email, who very often have a mobile device, in their pocket. And these people, I think, are hungry. And that's why we also call them now essential workers. It's interesting to see the shift during the pandemic. But these workers who are extremely important, who are exposed every day to the customers or to the products, or work in the factories, or who are remote salespeople in the field in a mobile-only type of world, very often they know better about the feedback from the market, how people feel about the products, and that information sometimes was not transferred or could not be transferred to the HQ and to the people making decision. So I've seen very often, especially in retail, or especially in airlines as well, or hospitality, that when you can reduce these distances, physical and digital distances that COVID has in a way augmented, when you can reduce these distances, great things happen. And I cannot think of a product team or a marketing team who's not hungry for that feedback from the field. The problem is that they did not get it before, because you cannot use the intranet, or you cannot use emails to do like a virtual field trip every day from your mobile device without even traveling. And I think of it as a great challenge, a great technology challenge. And I think of it as something that makes a difference, just because when information travels, not just the good news, but also the bad news, and also the reality of the field and the reality of the factory or the stores, people can make better informed decision at the HQ level, I would say.
Yeah, I must say I agree. I mean, I think I've seen that in some companies in the past, where I've been interacting with people, or even where I've worked, where you kind of have a disconnect, don't you, between people who are on the coalface, so to speak, and to the people who are in the HQ or in the boardroom. And I think that is a big challenge for a lot of companies, is understanding what those people are thinking. I mean, kind of leading on from that, though, do you think there's a risk of divide, though, between frontline workers and office workers into 2021? Because this is something that's been in my mind for some time, and I know we were kind of chatting about it before we came onto the call this morning. But we're probably going to go back to some sort of hybrid world next year, where we'll all be working from home some part of the week. But for those of us who are frontline workers and who spend most of the time, or all the time on the coalface, either interacting with customers or in hospitals or wherever that is, do you think there could be that kind of risk of divide between those two groups potentially, if they don't think about this in the right way, if that business doesn't approach this in the right way?
I don't think so, but I'm an optimistic. I think once you've given everyone a voice, it's really hard to take it back. And I think there is a new generation of talents coming to the workplace, sometimes for the first time, who do have that expectation to have a voice, to be able to give feedback to the management, to be equally informed about what's happening, and to have a workplace where information travels fast both ways. So I think once you're there, once you've experienced that community feeling at work, it's impossible to go back to the old world and to a world where companies were divided in two. So I like to think it's here to stay, And based on what we see every day, with customers such as Telefonica or Vodafone or BT or AirAsia or the government of Singapore, once you have that, you want more of that because as we discussed, great things happen, and people are hungry for being connected, hungry for being informed, and hungry to contribute to the decisions of the company, one way or another.
Yeah, again, I agree. Like, I think there's definitely going to be that element of hunger here, and the way that people operate is going to change. And I think as long as people are engaged, there won't be a risk of that. But that probably leads on to a kind of follow-on question that I had on that in my mind, Julian. And Pawan, I just saw your message. Thanks for that. I don't have. Pawan was asking how many people are on the webinar. I don't have the exact number, but we can tell you what that is afterwards today. But do feel free to keep sending your questions through. Digital culture has been talked about a lot this year. I mean, I've spoken to a lot of CIOs and CTOs about it. We've done market insight surveys with our audience where digital culture has been coming up as a #1 technology challenge. Have you seen that as a key component, I guess, when you've been working on implementation of some of the projects that Workplace from Facebook has been doing, I guess, over the past 9 months?
No, we do, absolutely. And that's what we do. That's why people choose us. And interestingly, when I look at who buys Workplace, who are the people making the decision to go Workplace and to give a voice to everyone in the company, it's usually across IT, of course, but also HR and internal comms. And at the end of the day, what do they want to do? They want to drive, a different culture, or they want to scale a great culture as they expand and grow. But people understand that nobody wants to work for a company anymore. Everybody wants to work for a community. And how do you build a community at work? Well, you drive it with the culture, and it's an investment. It's not only HR; it's HR plus IT plus comms, and again, it makes a big difference. But the concept of culture being a competitive advantage, I think, used to be something for visionary companies or visionary leaders or founders. It's becoming mainstream. So if you don't have that at work today, you're probably looking for something that will bring you there as an HR executive or as an IT executive. What's interesting is the convergence of IT and HR. And we see with Workplace and other tools that the choice of your IT stack can have an impact on your most important HR metrics. As we said, employee sentiment, employee retention. We have a customer of Workplace called Clarins. It's the French skincare company in the UK, and fully frontline. People who work at Clarins work at the HQ or in the stores, in airports, and in spas, and so they are directly exposed to customers, and very distributed. And they told us that 6 months after the launch of Workplace at Clarins to everyone, they had 85+% adoption, but employee retention went up by a few points, 4 points to be exact. So the choice of an IT tool has a direct impact on your culture and gets your best people to stay longer, which has an impact on your bottom line. And I think this is, again, this is a great thing when it comes to the responsibility of IT and HR. And it's great to see these two functions together, driving the right culture.
That's really interesting, because that kind of increase in retention is quite key, I think, to any business going forward. And as you said, kind of increasing the bottom line, but making it a better place to work for employees. I mean, it's certainly something we've seen as well, Julian, is the HR team's getting way more involved in the adoption of technology. Do you see that as a growing trend? I mean, I think it's certainly some of the larger and medium-sized businesses doing that now. But do you see it as a growing trend that HR teams in the future will have a significant, I guess, place to play when it comes to choosing technology systems? And I guess and I'm sure you're going to say yes to that, but to add on, what would be your advice to any tech people we have listening to this session on how to work with our HR teams? Because that's always a challenge with working with those people who aren't fully technical.
So I do see that convergence. I spend my days literally talking to IT and HR leaders at the companies who we have the privilege of serving. And I think it's here to stay, because again, IT can have an impact on the most important HR metrics, and HR can have an influence on the choice of IT tools. Because at the end of the day, when you empower people, when you make sure everyone is more informed, more connected, you do the right thing for the company. And all of these metrics, all of these KPIs or OKRs, including having the right culture, the right digital culture, is also top of mind for the CEO. And very often when we launch Workplace or when we spend time with Workplace customers, the CEO is very often the most engaged user, because they want to talk to everyone in the company. They want to treat their employees like family. They want to make sure everybody understands what's important. They want to get the feedback, the questions from the field. We see a lot of CEOs using Workplace to go live to everyone in the company globally on a weekly basis. And again, all of these things are becoming top of mind and top of the agenda for HR leaders, IT leaders, and of course, CEOs and founders themselves. And I think it's a very positive trend.
Yeah, I think it is. It's definitely a positive trend. I think it ties into the health and well-being piece that you were talking about earlier as well, and makes companies really think about, I guess, their employees. Just thinking about health and well-being, and I know you've kind of touched on this at the start, and we've talked about it a little bit as well. It's something on the mind of every executive this year, and obviously making sure employees engage is really critical. That results in more happiness, more retention. But thinking from your perspective, I guess your team that you work with now, in a personal perspective, how have you managed health and well-being within your team? And what would your advice be to any other companies that are still continually thinking about this? Because it's an iterative process, right? Like you can't just say, oh, I've ticked that box and sorted health and well-being. You've got to keep an eye on it constantly.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time, obviously, internally, making sure our people felt great, felt informed and supported during the pandemic and the lockdown. But we also spent a lot of time with our customers, helping them to reach the same state, I would say. And it's been interesting to see how people used software and used automation and bots, for example, to do check-ins with their employees and make sure they had access to the right information if they needed something. I can think of a company which is a Workplace customer in the UK called Moneypenny. I think they are in the customer support industry, and they created a bot that is asking employees how they feel. And if people click, I don't feel great today, they have access to information or support, or they can talk to people about it. So it's been automated because people understand that it's top of mind for employees to feel supported, and for employers to make sure people know they can be flexible, that it's not the world we're used to, and that they can have access to amazing resources. Because again, it drives employee sentiment and it drives employee retention. And companies understand that it's better to be able to keep your great employees and your great talents. It's less expensive as well than to try and find new ones. But COVID, I think, forced these conversations about mental health, well-being at work, offering more flexibility, thanks to software very often, and by having the right culture. But as you said, Harry, it's top of mind for everyone. But people have different approaches and solutions. But automation, for me, the automation of that, of well-being and mental health, and just being able to feel the pulse of your people and your company in real time all the time, is a very interesting change. It's information that was invisible before, or that was just not available before to the people making decisions in the company, that is suddenly becoming available, accessible, and that you can take actions on.
Yeah, that is interesting, and being able to take actions on that data that's coming in, I think, is quite critical for the way that companies are going to be able to work and operate into the future. I mean, that kind of nicely leads us on to my next question, which is just thinking about that data and thinking about how people interact, and obviously monitoring people's health and well-being, but also thinking about the user experience, how you and I use these systems and operate with them. I mean, I'm sure we've all had video fatigue this year, and everyone's been very busy throughout the time of the pandemic, but also we're all starting to think about, I guess, into 2021, what the user experience might need to be when we go into a world of hybrid work. And I've been speaking to a number of analysts who have said to me, well, videos become commoditized. It's like email now. But what's your view on the user experience? Because I feel 2021 is going to be the year of user experience. There's going to be more demands around that from users. How do you think that's going to need to change into the future to support, I guess, the future of work and more collaboration?
Yeah. very often I hear our customers telling us, which I always love to hear, that they love Workplace and they love the tool. And as much as I love my own product, I think what people love is the feeling of being connected, the feeling of belonging to an organization where you have great colleagues, you discover people you did not know that are part of the same organization, and you get to work with them and to learn from them or to support them. And I think that feeling of being connected and belonging to a great organization with great people is all about the user experience. You cannot do that via an email. You cannot do that with the intranet. Video conferencing, the interfaces have not changed in the last 10 years, basically. But I think, trying to make that possible, trying to make it user-friendly, mobile-friendly, especially for people who are not used to, traditional SaaS tools, that can make a difference. I like to think that Workplace has an edge because, if you know how to use Facebook and if you know how to use WhatsApp, you already know how to use Workplace, and you know that feeling of being part of a group, of being connected. But bringing that to work, can be a real edge for us, but also for the companies using our product. And when we have partnerships, for example, with DocuSign, with ServiceNow, with Microsoft, with G Suite. The vision we have for these integrations is that at the user level, it has to be so integrated, so user-friendly, so seamless as an experience that you almost think all of that is coming from the one same vendor. And people are, I think, especially in IT, are asking for these best of breed / integrated experiences, but the user experience was always left behind in a way. And I want us with Workplace to bring that back and to provide these experiences that are almost as good as the experiences you have on your personal device with your personal app. There was a time where the tools or the technology you had at work was better than what you had at home, but I think it's changing. What you have at home is sometimes better than what you had at work. But people do want at work the same experiences, the same ease of use and mobile friendliness, which I hope we can provide, or we do provide already today.
Yeah, otherwise there's this risk of shadow IT, isn't there? I mean, there's been
Exactly.
all sorts of conversations around people using different systems when if they're financial trading and they're not regulated. There's all these different challenges around it. I mean, you also touched on automation a little bit earlier, Julian, and it's something a theme that I just wanted to pick up as well. I guess automation is the next thing as well after user experience. It's certainly been number 3 in all of our kind of survey results when we've been asking people about the big technology issues behind digital culture, and behind also the health and well-being piece, and user experience. But how do you think automation is going to shape the way that people work? I mean, you touched on it with mobile use, but do you think we're going to have a lot more automation and that's going to make our jobs easier?
Yeah, I see, and I see that already happening at many customers. It's almost science fiction, and I will talk about it later. But if connecting the front line is the next frontier for IT and SaaS, I think the next frontier will be going from communication to automation in a very democratic and universal way, not just for the people like you and I with a great computer or great iPhone working at the HQ, but for everyone. And we think of it as a sequence. When once you have connected everyone, once you have that community, that active community with truly everyone in the company on the same platform, sharing information, sharing documents or files, the next thing you will want is to be able to automate and to go from communication to automation so that people can get rid or can execute faster some of the repetitive tasks that they have to do. I've seen companies like Honest Burgers, for example, in the UK, or again, Moneypenny, the company we just mentioned, doing things like, inventory management via bots on Workplace, shift management, PTO management, expenses management, employee sentiment surveys on bots. So a year ago, you would have said this is science fiction, it's never going to happen. But right now, we see people again in hospitality or frontline employees who are truly behaving and using IT as a software powerhouse. And I think bringing that level of productivity and automation, making it easy for people to do their job or to train to learn something new or to be trained faster, it's a fantastic opportunity. And there is a lot of buzz and a lot of hype around bots and automation in general. But I do believe that, because of COVID and because of the acceleration and because all of these communities, digital communities that have been created, it's the right time to invest in that. And it will not only drive, I would say, the stickiness of workplace, but from a user perspective, it will bring a lot of value. If you get paid on workplace via a bot from your employer, if every morning you have a bot that tells you you're going to have to work there today with these people, and this is how long you're going to have to work in the store or in the restaurant. This is, for me, what I like to call it next gen IT. It's the democratization of these experiences who used to be reserved to people who can pay $200 per month for software. Now it has to be for everyone.
And it's interesting what you say about bots. I mean, that, I think, as you said, there's been a lot of hype around that, but there are actually now quite significant practical use study or use cases coming in utilizing those, where they are dramatically increasing productivity or lead gen for sales teams or all sorts of things. Are you seeing companies be more open, I guess, when it comes to consideration of using bots? Because there was that kind of hype period, wasn't there? And then there was a lull. And now it seems to be actually coming in that there are practical applications for using these in a significant way.
Yes, I think so. And again, it took the creation of these communities. You think about bots and automation, once you have created that active community of engaged users on the same digital communication platform. You don't know you need it when you start, but once you have it, you need to go to the next level. You need to go from, workplace being the place to talk about the job to workplace being the place to get the job done. And some of these bots, we talked about well-being bots. We have a partner in the UK called the Bot Platform. They have, I think, 60 plus bots on Workplace, and they just launched a Secret Santa bot on Workplace. It's very social, but they are selling it like hotcakes. And I can also think of more serious bots, again, inventory management or PTO management, or the DocuSign bot that we have. You can use DocuSign on Workplace without even having the DocuSign app on your app. All of that, will become a mainstream thing in 2021.
Interesting. I'm going to have to check out the Secret Santa one.
It's a good one.
Yeah. We're coming to the end of our time, Julian. So I've got one final question to ask you. How do you think, what would be your final piece of advice when you thinking about the people listening today? How should companies, I guess, be thinking about how they should plan for the future of work? What's the one thing they should focus on? And just kind of to follow on from that, what additional themes do you think we're likely to see appearing in the next two to 3 years when it comes to the future of work?
Well, this is not a personal opinion. I'm going to repeat what I've heard from many customers that we get to work with every day. But I believe that the most important asset of a company are their employees, and it's time to finally connect everyone. It's time to finally make sure everybody is equally informed and empowered at work, and to give a voice to everyone. Because again, I think we'll be able to tell the winners from the losers of COVID based on how much people invested in their internal community and how much these people felt supported, informed, and productive every day when they had to go to work from home. And I think being able to make everyone successful at work, whatever they do, wherever they have to work from, again, will be a competitive advantage for many companies. And this is where IT and HR are coming together. But I think it's going to be a big trend in the next few years, because we simply did not know a year ago that it was possible to create a community at work, to feel part of that community, a very meaningful community, which is the people you get to work with, to serve the customers you want to serve. But it's COVID in a way catapulted all of us in that world. It's possible now. Many companies are doing it, and I think it's becoming a clear competitive advantage. And we'll see more of that. Communication, automation, and community at work in general.
Yeah, good answer, Julian. And I like the piece to sum up the convergence between IT and HR and what that's going to mean for communities at work. I think that it's definitely going to be a long-term trend. We come to the end of our time for all of you that are listening. So I just want to say a huge thanks to Julian for joining us this morning. I think a really, really interesting talk. For those of you who are listening, this will be available on demand going forward. So we will send out a recording to you. Feel free to share that with your colleagues, and you'll be able to pick that up and pass it around. But Julian, thank you very much for joining us for today's UCX talk, and we'll catch up soon, I'm sure. And Merry Christmas to you and your family in the meantime.
Thanks a lot. Same to you, and thanks again for the opportunity.
Thanks, Julian. Bye-bye. Thanks
Bye-bye.
for listening, everyone.